Dad's birthday. My sister's son dumped soda in my lap and yelled, "Grandpa says you don't belong here." The table laughed. I wiped my clothes, smiled, and stayed quiet. That night, I pulled my name from their loan. By morning, his car was gone. And at 8 a.m., there was a knock at my door. I opened it and saw, "My name is Rowan Adley, I'm 36. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned." How do you stay loyal to a family that cashes your silence like a check? They needed my credit. Badly. The loan was for a second property, my dad's retirement dream, or so they said. Except it was really for my sister's husband's failing landscaping business, which, by the way, didn't even have a website. Still, I signed. Because blood is thicker than sense. Until that night. Until the soda. The laughter. My dad raising his glass and saying, "Kids speak the truth, huh?" Like humiliation was a joke he'd been waiting to tell. I sat there. Soaked. Tight-lipped. But inside, a switch flipped. I went home and logged into the bank's portal. Removed myself from the co-signer list. They'd made one mistake on the paperwork, listed me as optional party, not primary. They thought I wouldn't notice. I did. By dawn, the loan had been flagged. Frozen. Re-evaluated. And with that freeze, came the repo man. Because the down payment, that shiny new car they bought for the business, had been leveraged against the loan. And now, the loan was in limbo. So when the knock came at 8 a.m., I expected more begging. But it wasn't my sister. It was my brother-in-law. And his hands were shaking. He didn't say hello. Just stood there in a wrinkled t-shirt, sweat on his neck, like he'd sprinted from guilt itself. "They took the car," he muttered. "First thing this morning. Just drove it off the driveway." I stepped aside without inviting him in. He walked past me anyway. "I need you to fix it, Rowan. Just call the bank. Say it was a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding? Was it a misunderstanding when my nephew humiliated me in front of 12 people? When my sister grinned over cake while I dabbed soda from my jeans? When my dad toasted to my exclusion like it was a birthday wish? I crossed my arms. "No." His head snapped toward me. "What?" "No," I repeated. "You dumped soda in my lap. Not literally, but close enough. And then you expected me to pay for dessert. You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm dead serious." He paced my kitchen, hands flailing. "My clients, my equipment, everything's in that truck. And none of that's my fault," I said, calm as glass. That's when he made the mistake. He leaned in. Too close. "You think this won't come back on you? Your father already texted me." I cut in, reaching for my phone. Said, and I quote, "You've always been ungrateful." He blinked. I held up the screen. Then another message from my sister. "We'll remember this next holiday." "Good," I said. "Remember it." He stormed out, muttering threats that didn't scare me. But what came next did. An hour later, I got a notification. Someone had tried to access my credit file. Twice. From my parents' address. They weren't just angry. They were getting desperate. "You said." The attempted credit access didn't surprise me. What surprised me was how fast they moved. I checked the timestamp. 9:12 a.m. Just after he left my house. They weren't just angry. They were mobilizing. My sister, who once cried when I spotted her cheating on a high school math test, now thought identity theft was fair play. I called the bank. Placed a freeze. Locked every account with biometric authentication. Changed every password, even the ones I hadn't used in years. Then I pulled the deed from my safe. The family cabin. Signed over to my name 2 years ago when Dad needed help avoiding foreclosure. He said, "It's still the family's, I just need your name on it for the mortgage." So I paid it off. $72,000 in silence. I never mentioned it again. Neither did he. Until now. Until the messages started coming in. "That cabin isn't really yours. You know that, right? You think you're better than us now? Don't forget where you came from." I hadn't. I came from a place where love was conditional, where silence was currency, where a little girl learned to smile through insults because that's just how your uncle jokes. No more. I scheduled a title transfer. Not to them, away from them. I put the cabin in a trust. Legal. Sealed. Irrevocable. No family member could touch it now, not even if I died. That afternoon I got a knock. Not at the door. At the window. It was my nephew. The same one who dumped soda in my lap. He stood in the yard, holding a handmade card. Crayon letters spelled out, "Sorry." But I didn't open the door. Because sometimes they send the child to clean the blood off a knife they all held. The card stayed on the porch for hours. Rain came mid-afternoon, curling the corners of his apology. By sunset, it was soggy pulp, a metaphor really. Because guilt means nothing when it's delivered by proxy. That night, I opened my laptop and checked the shared family calendar, something we'd all used for years. Birthdays, holidays, anniversaries. I noticed something strange. My name was gone. From everything. No more, Rowan brings dessert on Thanksgiving. No more, Rowan's half of cabin maintenance due. Even my birthday deleted. Erased, quietly and completely. I refreshed twice. It wasn't a glitch. They'd removed me. Digitally, symbolically, emotionally. But not legally. Because the trust still stood. And the cabin was still mine. And that loan, still frozen, pending reevaluation, thanks to my withdrawal. I knew what was coming. The money talks were about to turn into meetings. And soon after that, threats. So I beat them to it. I mailed certified letters to every name on the loan. My dad. My sister. Her husband. Each envelope included a notarized statement confirming my voluntary withdrawal, a copy of the trust holding the cabin, a letter from my lawyer stating that any further credit inquiries made in my name would result in legal action. No fluff. No warmth. Just ink and law. And then I did one last thing. I booked a cabin rental in the mountains, not our cabin. A new one. With soft flannel sheets and no ghosts in the walls. I needed distance. Not just miles, but meaning. I told no one where I went. Because when you grow up thinking silence keeps the peace, you forget that sometimes distance is the only true boundary. And I was finally learning how to draw one. The mountains were quiet. Real quiet. The kind where you can hear your own pulse, and nothing demands your attention except the rhythm of trees and wind. I didn't bring much. Just a duffel bag, a few paperbacks, and my phone turned off. For 3 days, I remembered who I was before I became the fixer. Before family dinners turned into business meetings. Before trust was something they borrowed, not built. But peace has a short leash. On day 4, I got an email from the bank. Subject: Urgent Activity Alert. Someone had filed a complaint, claimed my loan withdrawal was fraudulent and retaliatory. They even attached a letter. Not from a lawyer. From my father. On letterhead, he printed himself. Full of emotional manipulation, calling me unstable, claiming the family was concerned for my mental state, and that my impulsive behavior was putting financial plans at risk. I stared at the screen. For a second, it worked. I felt that old guilt creep in. The voice they planted when I was 13 and told to keep the peace, because I was the quiet one. Then I remembered. They laughed when I was soaked in soda. They erased me from the calendar. They tried to steal from me, twice. I called my lawyer. Wes didn't miss a beat. Already drafting a response. We're adding a clause to your cabin trust. No family member may legally claim mental incompetence without court documentation. He paused. You okay? I looked outside. The sky was bruising toward sunset. My tea had gone cold beside me. I'm not broken, I said. I'm just done pretending they didn't try to break me. That night, I slept with the windows open. Because, for the first time in years, the only thing trying to get in was the wind. 2 weeks passed. No calls. No knocks. No new sabotage. Just silence, sharp and waiting. Then came the certified envelope. It wasn't from the bank. It was from my father's attorney. Inside, a letter claiming I'd committed intentional financial sabotage that caused reputational harm and emotional distress. They were exploring civil recourse if I didn't make things right. What did make things right mean? Apparently it meant re-adding my name to the loan, granting limited family access to the cabin for holidays and events, publicly retracting my malicious legal interference. They were trying to rewrite my boundaries as betrayal. I sent the letter to Wes. He called me laughing. "This isn't a legal threat," he said. "It's a tantrum dressed in legal stationery. But tantrums can still rattle you." I sat with it for hours. Let the memories play like an old movie. Dad asking if I'd ever contribute emotionally, not just financially. My sister saying, "If you don't want to be part of the family, stop acting like it's a burden." My nephew's soda can hitting my lap, sticky and cold. No one had ever asked me how I'd survived all those years quietly paying. They only asked what I'd do once I stopped. So I answered. I drafted my own letter. It wasn't defensive. It was final. I cited every date, every document, every message. Attached copies of every transaction, showing not just absence of fraud, but proof of manipulation from their end. At the end, I wrote one sentence in bold. I owe you nothing legally, emotionally, or financially. I mailed it the next morning. Signature required. That same day, I saw they'd listed the cabin on Airbnb. But here's the twist. They forgot they didn't own it anymore. You said. I nearly laughed when I saw the listing. Photos of the cabin, my cabin, on Airbnb. Polished wood floors, vintage quilts, a caption that read, "Family-owned rustic gem. Mountain views. Sleep 6. I recognized the towels. I bought them. They hadn't even tried to hide it. They listed it under my sister's name. Used old photos, ones she must have taken back when she still had a key. There was a reservation pending. I could have called the platform, reported fraud, filed a claim, but instead I waited. Let the reservation go through. Let the guests arrive. And when they did, I had the caretaker, my hired property manager, greet them at the door with the truth. This property is not available. The listing was unauthorized. Full refunds are being processed. He handed them printed copies of the trust deed. Wes made sure of it. The guests left, confused but polite. But my sister? Not so much. She called me 20 minutes later, screaming through the speaker. "You humiliated me. Do you know how this looks?" I let her rant. Then I said, "It looks like you tried to profit off something you don't own." Click. She hung up. I emailed Airbnb that same night with documentation. The listing was removed in under 12 hours. They tried again 2 days later, this time under my brother-in-law's name. Same result. Every attempt they made only reinforced my case. Pattern of exploitation. Repeated, intentional misrepresentation. Undeniable paper trail. I wasn't just defending a property. I was building a fortress, one document at a time. And when the next envelope arrived, I knew what it was before I opened it. A court summons. They were suing me for alienation of familial property, which wasn't even a real thing. But their desperation was. The courtroom smelled like old paper and pride. They actually showed up with a lawyer, not a good one, just loud. He argued customary inheritance, emotional stake, and informal agreements made over family trust. But here's the thing about informal agreements. They dissolve under oath. Wes stood calmly, opened a folder. Page by page, he laid it bare. My sole ownership of the cabin. The notarized deed. The trust, irrevocable and sealed. The messages, digital proof of threats, manipulation, and property fraud. He didn't even need to raise his voice. My father stared ahead, jaw clenched. My sister kept blinking like the truth was dust in her eyes. My brother-in-law scribbled furiously on a pad with no ink. The judge took less than 10 minutes. Dismissed with prejudice. Translation? They couldn't sue again. Not for the cabin. Not for the loan. Not for anything. Outside the courthouse, I passed them in the hall. My sister muttered, "You've destroyed this family." I paused. Not angry. Not smug. Just done. "You destroyed it," I said. I just stopped pretending it was whole. They didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because some silences are acknowledgments. That evening, I returned to the real cabin. Mine. lit the fireplace, made tea in the mug Lila once painted for me. The trees stood tall outside, indifferent to drama. And I, for the first time in years, felt unclaimed. Not abandoned. Not estranged. Unclaimed. No more manipulation, disguised as tradition. No more financial strings tied to fake love. No more erasing myself to earn a seat at a table I built. I opened the window. Let the cold in. Let the truth breathe. And somewhere behind me, the kettle finally whistled.